And it wasn't that we were lacking talent or anything like that. We knew we were going to be good. It was, okay, how can we be as efficient as we can to get the kids off the field? And so we started looking at just our practice plan and what we were doing on a daily basis. And within our coaches, our defensive staff and our offensive staff, we just looked at different areas, to how could we minimize the amount of time that we're out there on the turf.
Welcome to this week's Champion Series presented by Signature Championship Rings. In today's episode, we have the pleasure of speaking with Justin Kammrad, the head coach of the 4A state champions from Iowa at Lewis Central High School. Coach Kammrad shares his insights on building a flexible scheme that fits their personnel while maintaining a strong identity of physicality. He discusses the importance of offseason development, the integration of the air raid concepts with a robust running game, and the strategies they use to maximize their practice efficiency. Be sure to stay tuned for our winning edge takeaways following the interview. On this week's Champion Series presented by Signature Championship Rings, we're talking to the 4A state champs from Iowa, Lewis Central High School, and what they do to build a flexible scheme that fits their personnel, but yet still have an identity of being physical no matter what they run. And joining me to discuss all of that is the head coach at Lewis Central, Justin Kammrad. Justin, it's great to have you here.
Thanks, Coach. I appreciate you having me on.
So, Coach, you guys really pride yourself in being multiple, being flexible. But for you, that starts with a concept of building and tailoring everything you do around the athletes. We'd love to hear your philosophy and then also get into what that looks like as you start to narrow down what's going to happen each season on the field.
Yeah, for us, our biggest thing, it really starts in the offseason and who we are returning from the year before and knowing and understanding what their strengths and weaknesses are as a football player and sort of building that around those guys and trying to find a plan with that. And so we really try to structure ourselves to be as multiple as we can within our offense. We want to run the football. We know we have to run the football in the state of Iowa to be successful, but we also want to have a passing game that sort of complements what we're trying to do and really complement our players and what they're really successful at. And so, the last couple of years, we've been able to do that with the personnel we have and find ways to maximize their abilities to, one, get down the field if it's a receiver, or two, get the ball in their hands as a running back, whether it's in the screen game or in the passing game as well as in the running game. And I'm trying to highlight our best players as much as we can, but also protect those schemes and some of those run plays or pass plays that with some of that play action or RPOs to really try to keep defenses off what we're trying to do. And we try to hide some of the stuff we do as well with motion and pre-snap motion and that kind of stuff to really try to make it a little bit harder on defenses. It's a shorter scheme for us. We don't want to be complex with what our guys are doing. We want to be as simple as we can with one-word calls, but just give it the defense the idea that maybe we're more complex than what we truly are.
When you're looking at this process throughout the year, the season ends, you got a new group of guys that you have together, some who have played before, some guys who are going to be new to being on the field as much as they are. How do you guys discuss that? What becomes the filter for figuring out, hey, here's probably what we're going to emphasize this season?
Yeah, we really, with our offensive staff, because we sit down and we identify those players that are coming back and what did they do well the year before? What made them successful? And how can we continue to elevate them and push them to get better? And so from there, we start with our returning players. And then through our offseason development program that we have at the high school, we start to identify all those other guys that honestly can complement those athletes that are returning to put them in a great position to be successful. And depending on what that level or caliber of that athlete is, depends on what we add or take away from what we did offensively a year ago. And so we're always trying to identify that next guy that sort of fits in that role of what we're trying to do. A lot of our passing game does come from the air raid offense, and then a lot of our run game is off inside zone and power. And so we try to marry those together as much as we can and find those guys that get in there. And our biggest thing too in every offseason is identifying those best offensive linemen that we have and really what we can do. Where do we put those guys? And we've always moved our guys around as much as we can. We try not to stick them on one side or the other, but we really try to play with maybe a heavy side and a fast side. And in order for our run game to be successful, we feel we have to be able to do those things. And so it really starts in the offseason, identifying those kids and what they can do, what they can't do, putting that together. And then from there, during our summer work, we really try to hone in on this is what we can do or we can't. And we sort of try to get everything done and evaluated by the time that we get to camp on the core plays that we're going to introduce that we're going to have ready for that first game. And then slowly, as our kids get more comfortable, like everybody get more comfortable, we start adding a little bit here and there, tags to every single play that we have.
So you talked about having that air raid passing game, but you guys definitely focus on the run. That one thing you like is that you want to be physical, especially at the point of attack. So how are you marrying, I guess, these two different concepts? One is air raid typically is pass to set up the run, but you being in Iowa definitely have to have a run the ball mentality as well. So how does that marry up for you?
Yeah, and for us, we're an 11 personnel team, probably 90% of the time. And so the first thing is we have to have that H-back tight end type kid that's going to play off the ball, that can come across and be physical in the run game, allow us to run inside zone with split zone action to be able to, one, maybe we'll read it with our quarterback or we'll be downhill and give it to him and we'll kick out and things like that. Also within our power game, but also is flexible enough that they can split out and play in the slot for us and to get into that four wide look to be able to throw the ball. And so it really, for us, our identity really does come down to those up front five guys and then that H-back tight end guy on what he can do. And so, our biggest thing is when we're putting this together is we're trying to identify maybe that guy that is athletic enough to play in that position. And we've been very, very fortunate over the years with the guys that we've had that have been in there and that have played that position. So we really emphasize that with our guys. And from day one, they understand that we're going to run the football first and then we're going to throw the ball second. And then how that opens up and marries each other, it gets pretty interesting. And so a lot of those air raid concepts are going to be mixed into our 11 personnel with our tight ends and our H-backs to be as flexible as we can and try to score as many points as we can.
So let's dig into that idea of physicality a little bit and how that's built in practice. I know you mentioned to me one of those things is the old 7-man sled, but the attitude obviously that goes behind it. How do you guys really focus on building that identity of being physical?
Yeah, I think the first thing, and most people will probably tell you, it really starts in our weight room. We really spend a lot of time with our kids in the weight room on developing that strength, that power, that explosiveness to be physical and get off the ball in a lot of different exercises that we do. And the old jammer as well. And from there, our guys spend a lot of time once we get the pads on one-on-one drills, our best on our best, and really trying to make it as competitive as possible within our O-line and D-line groups. And from there, we start every Tuesday practice. Our kids hate it, but we start every Tuesday practice on that old sled. And we go for 5 minutes straight, and however far we get up and down the field, as many times as we can. We're just trying to develop that physical toughness, but also that mental toughness to learn to drive and finish 5 yards down the field and really get after it and stay on a block. We're always trying to teach, and so we have highlight clips of the guys that have come before our guys and who have been able to do that and show them what that physicality looks like and finishing through the whistle and that. And so we'll show our guys, all of our linemen, and we'll show it to all of our guys, even our receivers, on how to finish blocks and how you stay on block, and really emphasize that. We grade our guys every day. In practice, we grade our guys after every game, and they're graded on that core criteria of one, alignment, assignment, execution. That execution part is that physicality, and that's what we're looking for as our guys do that, and really emphasizing the importance of it. We have an award at the end of the week for that guy that was the most physical after every game. And so we really emphasize that with our guys and make it really important. We just don't use words, but we really try to ensure that what we're doing in practice is really teaching those skills that we want to see on film after Friday night.
With the grading, especially on the practice side of that, it's important, obviously, that you're communicating and that those grades become actionable. So what are the things that are focused on for your coaches? And I guess looking at the efficiency too, the workflow, grading does take some time. How are you guys able to get through what you need to so that you can pass along the information and that is going to make a difference the next day?
Yeah, I think the greatest thing, I guess it's a plug, but our state is a huddle state, and so all of our programs in there. And so huddle's been really good. Our coach, our offensive line coach, offense coordinator will grade on huddle, and it allows you to create columns and allows you to tag each player in there. And so it makes the grading process really easy because it's a plus or minus one on your footwork. Okay, what's your footwork like? What's your hand placement like? What's your assignment? Are you executing that? And then what's the execution on the physicality and completing through the whistle? And so that has been really easy due to technology anymore. It's no longer just on paper and pencil and write it down and do that kind of stuff. And the great thing about Huddle is it generates a report at the end that our coaches basically sends to our offensive linemen, and they see that. And they'll talk about it at the next practice or before the next practice. We talk about it Sunday nights after our games on what that looks like. And so really detailed oriented with what we're trying to do with those guys. And then at the end, our coaches will show 5 great plays from the day before and 5 not so great plays from the day before so that they can see the difference in the execution and what it should look like so that they get a great idea of what's going on and how they need to be performing. And they can sort of compare themselves with others and see where that is. And I think that sort of drives some of the competition between our guys with a lot of stuff we do is who's the highest graded guy at the end of the week. They want to be that. Who wants to win what we call the hog of the week? Who wants to be there based on your grading? And so there's a lot of built-in competition. And I think a lot of stuff we do is built around competition within practices, within those games, and really trying to get the kids to believe in that philosophy of what we're trying to do and how we want to accomplish things in order for us to be successful.
What's the criteria? You mentioned that you have the most physical player. You're going to award and recognize him. What's the criteria for figuring out who that is each week?
Yeah, and we do. And a lot of that will come down to, how did they practice that week, but then to what was their execution? Obviously, there's knockdown blocks in there that we're looking for, and those are going to be highlighted marks and some of those pancakes and who finished through the whistle, who removed the guy from that. So our kids get super pumped up for that. And then just like anything, we post it to social media, so all of these kids want to be on social media, and so our entire community gets to see who won that award for the week. And that criteria for us, our linemen truly, truly believe in that and understand that everything flows through them, whether it's in the run game or the pass game. We need those guys to be successful, and they own it. They get excited about it, and they want to be the guy at the end of the week.
I know something that you mentioned to me before we got going is that you definitely have, as you've been in this profession longer, found a balance here about the physicality that's going to be on the field and how much you're out there, right? That you're going to be efficient, especially as you start to hit more toward the middle part of the season with how long you guys get out there. So how are you balancing that, building that physicality, but also being very aware of how much of a workload you're putting on your players?
Yeah, for us, really started back in 2021 when we won our first state championship, and we went 2-2 in our non-district play, and we just were having minor mistakes that were killing us. And I sat down with some of our captains, I sat down with our seniors. I just asked, hey, like, what was the issue? And really giving them some ownership and them to allow to use their voice to be able to share what was going on. They're like, well, we're just tired. Like, we feel like we're out there too long. And it wasn't that we were lacking talent or anything like that. We knew we were going to be good. It was, okay, how can we be as efficient as we can to get the kids off the field? And so we started looking at just our practice plan and what we were doing on a daily basis. And within our coaches, our defensive staff and our offensive staff, we just looked at different areas to how could we minimize the amount of time that we're out there on the turf. Let's take some miles off these guys. Let's keep them as fresh as we can. So when we get to Friday, we're not, by the end of the game, that we're able to finish the game. And so we looked at that and listening to the kids and how they felt their bodies were and what they needed. And then looking at, okay, where were our assignments missed? Like, was it really a technical deal? Was it an effort situation that we had to get corrected? And that allowed us to look at that practice plan and start removing things that really didn't meet that criteria, that really were sort of just time fillers, but really wasn't accomplishing much other than saying we were spending time on individual for 20 minutes, or we were spending extra time on special teams that we really weren't seeing any bang for our buck. And we went from practicing 2.5 hours to an hour and a half after our week 4 game. And from that time, we just started playing better. Our kids loved it. We were in and out of practice sooner. They were able to get home sooner. We're taking miles off them, and they just seemed to be fresh. And we had to be really super conscious as a coaching staff on identifying what needed to be corrected from the day before, how were we going to get that corrected, and which part of our practice plan that was going to be utilized in. And so we spent probably a little bit less time within our schemes because I felt our kids understood our schemes. And so we spent more time on those corrections, individual technique stuff that we needed to get done. And then we would just breeze through. We stopped really repeating plays. We stopped doing any of that. We have a drone at practice. so that we can go back and watch film and watch it with the kids, and so that they're not repeating plays over and over. And so we just try to be as efficient as we can within that practice plan. It really led to significant success, and our kids really buy into it. There's a lot more energy when they know that they're getting out of practice within 90 minutes. They're excited about that, and we're able to get most of our kids play both sides of the ball, and we're able to get all of that accomplished with all of them within 90 minutes. And it just has been something really good for us as we work through that second half of our season, as we try to get in the postseason as well.
For you guys, I know you say you vary it some based on what the needs are going to be after evaluating the film, but what does that hour and a half typically look like?
Yeah, for us, I'm a big guy on special teams. I think that's super important. So we're always going to spend at least 15 to 20 minutes on 2 different special teams. And so we're going to emphasize that every single day, because I think games are won and lost, and yardage is won and lost based on that. And so once again, I never say anything and then we don't follow it up with action. It's like, hey, if we're going to emphasize that, we're going to spend time on it. So we really do spend a bunch of time on our special teams. And we do have pre-practice period like most time, and that's where a lot of our install will happen with some of our special teams. And so our coach, our special teams coordinator, will go through some of that install prior to practice, so it's not high speed. And then every day is some type of indie drill, and so that we can get stuff corrected. Our pre-practice time, all of our guys know what their pre-practice ritual is and what they need to get accomplished, and it's at a low speed, whether it's Monday for our quarterbacks and there's footwork and movement drills and they're on their own during that time, or they're with the receivers going pat and go to get loose and that kind of stuff. So we'll always have some type of indie drill within practice that's correcting some of the fundamental mistakes or things that we need to correct it from there. And then we'll always do our 7-on-7 middle period, and then we'll get into our team time. And really how we do that is we split up our 1s and 2s within offense and defense reasonably that we can, to be honest with you, with guys that there's always that one kid that sort of falls in the line that he's a 1 on offense and a 2 on defense. And so how do we correct that time? So when we're doing inside run game with our number 1 front 7, our number 2 DBs are all working 7-on-7 against our number 1s. And so we always try to mix and match our guys and make sure if there's a kid that's struggling, maybe our inside linebacker struggling in the run game, or this run game is tough this week, our inside linebacker is going to spend more time down in the middle drill than he will with 7-on-7. And so we're doing stuff at the same time and just minimizing as much time we're out there. So we used to be a 20-minute 7-on-7 period for offense, and then we'd have a 20-minute period 7-on-7 for defense. And we no longer do that. So that's 40 minutes of practice right there. We reduced that to 20 because we're doing it all at the same time. Our middle and 7-on-7 is going on at the same time, and we're shuffling kids back and forth where we need them to make sure that they do that. And so it's pretty similar to probably what most people do. It's just how we're doing that, how we're maximizing each individual kid, where we're placing them within practice on what work that they need to get done within that time frame. So we started doing that, and that was our first go-to right there, because that eliminated 20 minutes of practice. Off of that, our walkthrough time with our special teams was really huge, because we would typically be a 20-minute session there, and now we're down to a 15 minutes. So we just started chipping away a little bit at every little segment within our practice and how we can maximize that time with our kids. And like I said, our team sessions used to be 20, 25 minutes long. Now we're not repeating stuff. We're just flying through that, and we'll watch film to correct stuff at the end. And so we really started to get ourselves down to that 90-minute practice time for our kids. And the kids value that, being on the field less and spending a little bit more time in the film room and on the chalkboard, instead of being out there trying to correct and go through multiple things over and over and just being totally exhausted out there.
You mentioned that you do have guys who go 2 ways. How do you deal with the offense and the defense over the course of the week in practice time?
Yeah, for us, is we look at how many reps a guy is typically going to take within a week. And if it's a high-level guy and we know that we feel comfortable with his execution, we'll limit those guys as much as we can to keep them fresh. And so they may take 2 reps while the backup takes 4. And so we feel really comfortable with that, but we always gauge that still on where our guys are at within understanding what is our scheme this week, what is the plan this week. If we don't feel comfortable, then they're going to probably take a little bit more reps. But we try to keep those guys as fresh as we can, because we understand they're playing both sides of the ball on Friday night. They're probably upwards of 140 plays, maybe, if they're playing special teams and that kind of stuff. And then if we're running them through the same type of practice plan and we're hitting 100 and some plays in practice for 3 straight days, they're going to be gassed. And so we really limit our 2-way starters as much as we can within practice, which is also really good because now I'm developing depth within that second teamer, that third teamer, and they're taking a lot more reps for our guys, which is just building that for down the road. And our JV guys are getting a little bit more time because of that, which is good. And typically we try to make sure that we don't play as many of our offense and defensive linemen on both sides of the ball, but sometimes we feel that we do that. And so depending on where they're valued at, we have a guy that's a really good offensive lineman, but also plays defense. We'll probably limit him a little bit more defensively so that he gets his offensive reps that week. So each guy's a little bit different, and we sit down as a coaching staff every week and look at how many reps are they taking in a game and how many reps do we anticipate them in practice, and really try to make sure that we're doing a little bit more teaching of those guys mentally than we are physically, just to keep them, once again, I keep going back to the fresh word, but try to keep them as fresh as we can for Friday, 9-week grueling season. If they're putting that many miles on themselves, they're going to be worn down and tired, and we're not going to have the best version of them when we get there.
And between offense and defense, the time for them, are you guys practicing separately, offense and defense, on that same day, or do you divide things up in a different way?
So every single day we'll do offense and defense. I'm very fortunate. We got a completely separate offense staff and defense staff, even though our kids do play both sides of the ball. And so we always will get some type of indie and on both sides for those guys. And they'll obviously do our middle 7-on-7 time as well as team. And so we don't practice separate. We'll do our indie stuff separate, but everything else will be together within one group.
So does that mean you guys are doing less scout when you're looking at that? Is it more thinking of you're out there just practicing as good as you could get, good on good?
Yeah, a lot of our times we're a little bit different. Our JV team plays on Monday, so we don't really get a scout team. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, those guys will service us a little bit. We try to get some of our better on better guys earlier in the week and then sort of more scout on Wednesdays, so that those guys aren't putting on so many reps and miles on their bodies. But for us, we try to, as much as we can, get our twos to go against our ones on both sides of the ball. And then we'll mix in some of those other guys based on where we're at. If our number 2 guy on offense is going to play a lot that week, then it'll be the number 3 guy. And so we really try to be really specific on what guys are in there at certain times within our scout teams and try to service each other with our best guys so that we see that instead of just trying to run out there with our JV guys and try to give us the best look. And obviously that's another part that will sort of reduce down as we get through the season too, is our scout guys will start doing more as we get down into week 8 and 9, just to try to limit those other guys that may be playing a little bit more than maybe they were at the beginning of the season. And so we're really fortunate to be able to do that, especially when we're doing our middle and our 7-on-7 period. We really have only 1 or 2 guys. We typically have 60-some guys on our varsity roster. We probably only have 2 or 3 guys that are really standing around, which I love. I don't like guys standing around. And so that has allowed us to have tons of guys getting a lot of reps during that time.
Coach, you're kind of in the middle of your career, 20 years in, and looking at how things have changed for you from your perspective. How has the focus changed over the course of your career to where you're at right now?
Obviously, when you start young, you're gung-ho, you're excited, you just want to go all the time, and which is fine. I think everyone's eager like that, and I feel like I'm still that way, but I'm more settled into trying to slow things down and more teaching and building those relationships with the kids and letting the wins and the success take care of itself while we're doing all the other things to build young men and prepare them for life after high school and things like that. And early on, it was probably never like that. It was about how are we going to win this game? How are we going to be successful? And every year we talk to our kids, and every week we talk to our kids about being in the moment, staying in the moment. And I think as a coach and a dad of 4 boys and that kind of stuff is just staying in the moment and relishing that and enjoying what's going on. And so has really slowed down for me in that aspect of teaching and understanding. We spend more time talking about our culture of our program and our philosophy of our program and how do we build that and what that looks like and how does that look like and translate to you as an individual after high school, and trying to do those things and not being so burn midnight oil and try to win and be successful. I think that's the end goal anymore, but I think it's the approach and the process of how we're getting there and how we're doing that. And so understanding that and understanding kids and understanding what we're trying to accomplish and where we're trying to take our program has been probably more exciting for me than anything because I feel like we're making a huge impact on our kids and our community by doing that, and not just saying win at all costs is the answer. And so I enjoyed that part of really slowing it down and really trying to build, young men.
Coach, I appreciate you taking the time and allowing us to take a peek inside your program and understand some of the things that have helped make you champions. And best of luck to you and the Titans here in 2024.
Thank you. I appreciate having us on.
Here are Winning Edge takeaways and ideas for implementation. 1. Build flexibility in scheme with a strong identity. Develop a flexible offensive and defensive scheme that adapts to your personnel. Focus on maintaining a core identity, such as physicality or versatility, that defines your team's approach regardless of the specific tactics you employ. 2. Have a comprehensive offseason development plan. Prioritize year-round player development to build a well-rounded, high-performing team. This includes strength and conditioning programs, skill development sessions, and integrating mental preparation to ensure your athletes are ready for the demands of the season. And 3, implement efficient practice strategies. Maximize practice efficiency by incorporating concepts that blend multiple offensive and defensive philosophies. For Coach Kammrad, this was finding the things that they needed to work on and cutting out the rest. By doing this, they created efficient practices that got their team off the field and kept them fresh for Friday night. Be sure to check out the 10% Toolkit. Explore these pages for helpful tips, a winning edge, and special promotions for Coach and Coordinator podcast listeners. The link is in the show notes. Sign up for a weekly tip sheet which shares the best ideas of each week. And follow us on X at Coach K. Grabowski.